Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Virtue Signal, the podcast about how to be moral in amoral times. I am here with our usual co-hosts, Taylor Meanswell.
Hello, hello.
And Andre Kello.
Yes, I am here. It's true.
And we are joined by a special guest, Seth Simons.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Seth Simons is a writer and a recent MFA in poetry, correct?
It's true.
Very congratulations.
Failed comedian. Exactly.
Are you a failed comedian?
No, I did it as a hobby for a little bit, but I'm also a failed playwright and a failed lots of other things then. Failed birdwatcher.
Failed birdwatcher. Okay, well, that's how I should have known that ahead of time. I would have introduced you with that first. Anyway, we are here to talk about Ridiculous, the Louis C.K.'s brand new special. One, I just want to say how hack the name is. I feel like there's like a million stand-up comedy specials called Ridiculous. I think it's like stupid. And we want to talk about it in terms of the gations that have been gated against Louis C.K. The gations. There's a comedian in Austin, I think, who talks about gations, and I really like it. So how this stand-up special is in relationship to Louis C.K.'s legacy. Taylor can say this, and Andre can say this too, and maybe you can too, Seth. I was a huge Louis C.K. fan for a very, very long time. I've seen him live many, many times. And when his refusal to apologize for his abuse, his workplace abuse, as Kath Barbadoro points out, it is workplace abuse, of so many women, have soured my view and certainly inflected upon my experience of this show, of the new special. But also, I feel like I'm able to judge it on its merits itself too. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, I think I'm sort of on the same page as you. I wasn't a huge fan. I don't think I was a fan, but as a comedy consumer, I've never been into the type of stuff that he does. I mean, I enjoy it. I remember liking the one bit he had ages ago that like found its way from, if you have a peanut allergy, that sucks, but maybe you deserve to have a horrible reaction, and spins that into, if you're a soldier and you die abroad in war, maybe you kind of were asking for it. Okay. That to me is sort of exemplary of the type of social critique that I found interesting in his work.
Also, that bit is hinged around consent too.
Yes,
which is interesting.
But I, as a comedy fan, I tend to want things that are a little stranger and more theatrical than the sort of straightforward storytelling that he does and is very good at. So not denying that, just saying I don't think I exactly was the sort of huge fan that I guess I have been of other comedians, but
he had an arc, sort of, like Woody Allen did. Starting out doing really broad, like Marx Brothers kind of very absurd comedy when he was working as a writer on Chris Rock show, and then made Pootie Tang, but then went, like Woody Allen, toward the naturalism, right?
Mm-hmm. Naturalism is definitely what you get from Horace and Pete. He's a very generic comedian in that sense. Like, he's indebted to his own genre.
Yeah. I guess I actually should qualify what I just said with, I did like the TV show. I like the FX show quite a bit.
Yeah.
And sort of the lineage of millions of other shows that had to emulate it in order to get a green light.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I think that was an important contribution to the form of the half-hour TV comedy.
I was working as a nanny at the time when that show was out in New York City, and I really related to how he talked about his toddlers, because I was just spending all day long with toddlers and like indulging their insane whims, and it's very like it's an inherently absurd situation. So regards to this special, I just want to talk about how like it opens up with an AIDS joke, which like is fine. By the way, I'm fine with AIDS jokes. Like, I'm fine with any kind of joke, really.
It might benefit us if I have written down a kind of outline of the entire special. So
okay.
I was inspired. I saw the film Lenny, and there was a policeman who gets up in court and recounts Lenny Bruce's act. And I thought, well, that was useful. Oh, yeah. So I thought I would do that for everyone.
Thank
here.
you, Andre. Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So Louis hasn't had sex in years. He hates to wake up in the morning. He's not a good guy in his dreams. His father was a bad father. He does a Jamaican accent for a carer at a rest home. He has bags under his eyes. He has a lingering cough. He's drifting apart from his friends. He would very easily break under torture. He has rashes all over his body. He's never done jury duty, even when they told him to. He doesn't go to the movies. Sunny days don't make him happy, and life, in his estimation, is too long.
Yeah, that about covers it. I did laugh at various points throughout it. I guess one thing I've noticed in the coverage of the special is how everyone just is noting how bleak it is, and how it's not really as, like, I guess, exuberant as his prior work. And the one that everyone's calling attention to, that I guess Netflix released as the trailer for it, is the one where he talks about, like, not liking it when strangers comment on. Yeah, and it actually, which is, like, so counter to my very philosophy, and actually leads to a point I want to make, which is that not only is this set hack, I believe it is explicitly against every impulse of the avant-garde as a tradition and as a form.
So you think it's reactionary?
I think it's reactionary. Here's why I think that. So the avant-garde is, as a thing, is constantly re-articulating itself in relationship to a nowness, to an like unrelenting presence, right? So the situationists were really interested in this. Derives are, the futurists were interested in this in terms of, like, noise and sound and things like that, and happenings in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. And it's just, that's like a consistent like pinpoint of what the avant-garde is and does. This is a direct refusal to do any of that. It is, you'll notice in Andre's list, is all about the things he doesn't do and doesn't like and doesn't engage with and refuses to participate in. It's like antisocial. And there's a kind of, like, anti-transgression to that. There has to be some kind of sociality at work in order for anything to be really creative, I think.
I think there have been creative misanthropic comedians in the past. I think that misanthropy can be very fruitful and productive when it is, like,
mobilized.
When it's contrasted against some sort of affirmative project.
Exactly. There has to be, ding, 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 a dialectic, and this is just sort of, like, annihilative.
It reminded me of the way somebody would, like, complain about their lot in life when they're getting drunk at a bar by themselves.
Oh, yeah. That's very real. 100%. Yeah. Like,
I was struck by how much of it seemed to just be about growing old and the terror of growing old and how unpleasant old people are. Mm-hmm. And how he seems to be very unhappy about growing old and being around his parents aging and dying.
It was interesting to see someone portray themselves as, like, disgusted and upset, but without really any shame or guilt that was immediately apparent. I mean, maybe he was, like, sort of psychologically undergirding it, but, like, I don't know. That didn't seem to play a role to me.
No, he's a sort of high-status curmudgeon.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty fascist point of view.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so, yeah.
Like, I hate everything, and that's why all this stuff should be destroyed, because my hatred is more important than anything that actually exists or makes things in the world.
Yeah. So, like, I'm not saying that I think Louis C.K. is a Nazi or a fascist. I'm saying that formally and generically, this special is anti-avant-garde, anti-creativity, anti-engagement with the world, which...
Yeah, well, you brought up the first joke, the opening joke earlier. Do you want to say more about that?
Oh, I was just like, really? You're opening with an AIDS joke? It felt like, I was like, is this like HBO in the 90s? Like, it felt so...
Spoiler for the listener, there are 3 times in this special in 1 hour where the punchline is AIDS.
Yeah. It was bizarre, and I kind of don't know what he was thinking.
I got tally marks.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, it's a very different thing to even have AIDS, right? Mm-hmm. Like, AIDS in the 90s was a nightmare that tormented the dreams of grown-ups and children.
Yeah.
And now you can just live with it. People take, pre-exposure and post-exposure prophylaxis. There are all these interventions, and so it's not a death sentence. And therefore, when you use it as a punchline like this, it is looking backward. at a time when AIDS was different from the way it is now.
And also he treats it as, well, he does treat it in terms of how it is kind of currently understood, which is like, oh, this is an inconvenience. No, it's not a death sentence, like you said. It's lateral to all the other things he complains about. It's not worse than anything else.
I would say too that formally, in addition to being an AIDS joke, it was a series of misdirections. It was I got an AIDS test not because I haven't had sex in a while, but because I just want some good news.
Yeah.
Anyway, it turned out I had AIDS. Yeah. I got AIDS. You don't just get it from gay people anymore. You can get it just from fucking rats. I fucked a rat. Yeah, I fucked a gay rat. It was just this whipsaw type of rapid fire misdirections thing that I think is sort of open mic replacement level humor that I suppose it's decently elegantly executed.
I was just going to say it was like pretty.
Shit.
It was pretty dexterous, but hack. I agree.
Yeah. And he relied a lot on misdirections in this special, I think.
Which is
misdirections and then anti-humor.
Yeah.
That's the punchline.
Which is
the misdirection is that you think I'm going to tell a joke.
You think I'm going to tell a joke and that's on you. Yeah. Which is crazy. And that's the nihilism I'm trying to get at.
Well, there's a very interesting context to this. I read a lot of this as unspoken, but it seems like this is almost, this special exists in the shadow of Louis C.K.'s career almost. Like it's he tries to do an old school Louis type of special, in my opinion, without the kind of authenticity that made him him. He still does the the extreme degree of specificity, right? When he's talking about the frozen chicken maxi pads and stuff like that, he still does the try to frame life lessons as like, yup, it's a bitch and then you die type of thing. He still is doing all of that, but he's not, the authenticity is not there because you don't get the impression that he's taking any actual risks.
Fascinating.
Because he's already taken and suffered the consequence, air quotes for the listener, of the ultimate risk, right? And now he feels like he has nothing, like he's in this like embittered position where he's like, well, I actually can't address this situation and like engage with it in a way that like would have made my fan base appreciate me a little bit more, would have made them go like, oh, well, at least he's being real, at least he's honest about what a piece of shit he is. No, there's like a pastiche. He's like, not only am I Louis before the allegations, I am Louis before the TV show.
Yeah.
Right? This is very much giving
it's like Backrooms Louis, it felt like to me.
Like I would never call a gay guy a faggot unless he was being a faggot. That era.
Yeah.
Contrast that to me is the like before the peak of his fame, before people started calling him a genius, which is all our fault, by the way.
Yeah,
we have a we
failed.
We
As
did.
millennials,
we
failed. Yeah.
This was like pre-genius, and then post-genius. I think of what Seth said earlier, the of course, but maybe special. Of course, children shouldn't die, but maybe if a peanut would kill you, you deserve to die. Mm-hmm. That to me is like after he's gotten his flowers, but before it's all come tumbling down. And so this is 2 steps backwards for me.
It's also weird to see such kitchen sink realism feel so inauthentic and fake. Like the whole point of the specificity is to like immerse you in this realistic world, but it just feels alienating and abstract and weird.
The moment that felt very realistic to me was when he was talking about putting his father in a care home, because he goes into detail about his personal experience of entering the building and seeing people and interacting with people, and that part I think is attempting the kind of thing that he used to do, like when we saw him at the Bell House and he talked about what it was like being a child in Mexico, right?
Yeah,
and usually when he goes into the, specific human being stuff, it's about this like balancing act between the beauty and wonder of having a family and of falling in love and of being a human being. And then on the other side, all of the countless nameless indignities, right? And this felt like he's doing the realism thing, but just wallowing in the shit and not seeing the sunshine.
It's what I always talk about, like the exposure and critique is essential for something to sort of succeed as a work of art, or in order to avoid being pastiche. And this like doesn't really I don't know. Does it expose? Not really, but it also it critiques, but without exposure, I guess.
It exposes him, but not for the first time in his career. It exposes him not in a way that's in his control.
Yeah.
Maybe the second time in his career. Maybe the Vanity Fair article was the first time that it was out of his control.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that also resonated with me too, Andre. Because we just got done putting my mom actually in a nursing home, and it is a very backrooms environment. It's very bleak. There's a lot of artifice, but also when you're at the end of your life, you're also more likely to be more real in sort of your impulses and stuff. So it's this like really abject mixture of truth and reality and fakeness and cheeriness. That was very real.
There, in the most recent episode of Star City, the series on Apple TV Plus, it's about the Soviet space program in an alternate history, right? Sequel series to For All Mankind. Most recent episode, there is the chief designer, the guy who's in charge of the space program. He's been put in a little house in the middle of the woods, essentially in his own little private gulag. And, one of his colleagues comes and, threatens him, we'll put you in a real gulag if you don't help us solve this science problem. And he says, I'm an old man. I am no longer concerned with my fate.
Yeah.
And Louis an old man now. Like, he always has complained about being old and being fat and having bad knees and, being bad at sex and all those other things. But he looks so old now.
I love that he's not on Ozempic. I think that's so, that makes sense to me that he wouldn't do it,
Because he could easily have tried this kind of Zuckerberg in 2020 style, TRT glow up.
Oh, yeah, he totally could have, but he was like, no, that would require work and, doing something and being an agent in my own life,
Well, and it's just funny. I hate to make the whole thing smacks of gender, right? But it's just funny that what, an aging man's idea of not pretending anymore is,
Yes.
and it happens to look just like how he's lived his life for the last 30 years.
That is so
okay,
true. It's so convenient. That
I would
your
love to develop
revelations
a philosophy for life that perfectly corresponds with how I'm already living.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sort of like he was living as though he had already been canceled, and then he got canceled, and he was like, well, I guess I just keep doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Except now he's in a 12-step program, allegedly.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Really?
that.
That's what he told Theo Vaughn. I don't believe it, because...
Can you talk to us about the Theo Vaughn experience?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're friends, I guess.
You're his producer. You're Theo's producer.
Yeah, Theo and I are good chums going back to our school days in Louisiana. But he first of all, it seems like he basically wrote his novel Ingram about an avatar for Theo, just sort of an illiterate child.
Who did?
But so he went on Theo's
Louis?
podcast last year and talked about how, among other things, he wishes he could say sorry, but he can't say sorry because sorry isn't the only emotion he feels. It's more complex than that, and it's not a public thing. It's not a public famous guy thing. It's just a one-to-one man thing. That's how he put it. A one-to-one man thing.
Sing to me, muse
saying
of a
sorry.
complicated man. Yeah.
Saying sorry to his victims.
It was sort of unclear whether he envisions whether his concept of sorry is sorry to my fans for being exposed as this thing, or sorry specifically to the people I hurt.
It sounds-
because I know that he hasn't apologized to at least a couple of the New York Times sources. But
I know
Good.
that he he seems to refuse to say sorry, not because of anything concerned for the victims or anything, but because it wouldn't pay due diligence to the complexity of his own emotions,
yeah,
which is insane.
Huh.
it does seem insane, and I think it just seems kind of like a scary evil guy to me, which it is all sort of I could think about during watching much of the special. Is the value proposition of his work pre-cancellation was that he was, being vulnerable and exposing sort of the dark things, the human things that we all feel.
That's what I love.
I guess. And then it turned out he was sort of lying and not giving us the full story. And now he's still lying, and he's as famous as ever. and there is no mechanism apparently to hold him accountable to himself or to the greater public. And it just seems like this huge sex predator roaming free and talking at the end of his special about how barely legal magazines, they're clearly for pedophiles, but there's plausible deniability in them. And it's like, that's what you were doing. That's what your entire career was. And it's like he's bragging about it while also appearing not to brag about it. And it seems, I don't even know how to sort of untangle all of that, but it seems very scary to me, especially knowing too all of the people he's friends with in comedy, who are also all of the most famous comedians alive and don't particularly care about him being a sex predator.
Yeah.
Right. And that passage that I'm sure every single person, this is why I think what he doesn't say is just as loud as anything that he does says. I think that passage where he's ostensibly taking the moral high ground against jailbait porn. I'm watching it, viewing. Everybody in the audience is watching it, viewing. Probably everybody at home is watching it too, going, well, we're not listening to this coming from fucking you, right? And if he would have even just said that, if he would have just said like, oh, these fucking pervs, you're not technically a pedophile, but you're as close to being a pedophile as you can. And then look at the camera and be like, not that I'm anyone to say that. Like, it would have melted that what is it called? Not a precondition, a pretension. It would have melted that pretension of credibility if he had just like owned what a piece of shit he was, like we thought he was always doing, but he was in fact just pretending to do.
There is a kind of guy, and I meet them frequently, who is above average intelligence, is not especially conventionally attractive, is always white, not always white, usually white, who just is...
I'm always white.
You are. Who is just absolutely capable of the most audacity of any reality TV star. It's insane. Like psychological audacity. You know what I mean? Like not like grand hijinks or whatever, but like the refusal to say sorry because it doesn't do dignity to the complexity of your own emotions. Like that kind of psychological audacity. And you meet these guys sometimes. They're often comedians, I find. And they exist and they seem to be growing in mass. I think that podcasts enable them. Yeah.
I can't stand the thought of a podcast enabling a comedian.
Yeah, I mean,
I think there's one moment in this special where he alludes to the elephant in the room. And that is one of his many incest jokes, which I hope we circle back to as a theme.
Yes.
He's talking about his content warning, his dad fucking him as a little boy. And he has this moment where it almost seems like he does look at the camera and wink. This is how I took it, where he's talking about that and he says like, I should have said no at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I took that as like him kind of watching his own hands of his guilt. I think that the complexity, if I had to guess, that he feels towards like, oh, it's not enough to say I'm sorry. No, I think he's mad that he didn't technically break any rules according to his guidelines, and that like he's being caught on like a technicality, I guess. I think he resents those women for not like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And
I can't get into it. Like, ugh.
That's like the attitude of a lot of other comedians who are friends with him.
Yeah.
So I sort of assume that when they joke about how, the victims were adults who could have left, who could have said no, that's perhaps reflective of conversations they have had with Louis.
Can I ask, I have a clarifying question about the timeline. Did all of these events happen after he got the Louis deal from FX, or did any of these happen when he was just a minor successful stand-up who had a couple of specials?
The latter, I believe. One of them was when he was a writer on the Chris Rock show.
So very early, that's the 90s.
Yeah.
So this was a pattern of behavior that lasted almost 15 years.
Yes.
Oh, so it wasn't always an abuse of power. Sometimes it was just abuse.
Yeah, good point, Taylor. Yeah, that's true.
Well, I mean, he's a tall, large man. Like, intimidating people into not leaving simply by your presence is an abuse of power.
Yeah.
But I think that generally speaking, you know, people, especially men who are big and strong guys, they don't like to imagine that they are, intimidating or manipulating people simply by their like imagined physical mastery or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. The threat of violence that accompanies them simply for being a man in the room.
Yeah. They don't observe it. Yeah.
Oh, and the Chris Rock show one was when he was a writer and producer there, and this is the one anonymous person in the New York Times story who
It was
we don't
Chris
exactly we don't know her role exactly, but she said I think the big piece of why I said yes was because of the culture. He abused his power.
Yeah, I also think there's like for a guy like that, you know, who's just like doesn't aware of like how his effect on the world or isn't aware or doesn't care. There's a kind of relationship to like reality where he's like the protagonist of reality. And so everything gets filtered through that like ontology.
Well, there's an infinite amount of forgiveness just available, like an ocean that you can swim around in.
It's a forgiveness is a resource that is endlessly available to you at any time.
And if it's like deprived then to him, then it's like for whatever culture war reasons. And I think if I like, it's funny to be like, he's not really being honest in this special because that's obvious, but I think there's probably a lot more underneath that than what he's showing us.
I think it's funny that his first thing, like after the whole thing happened, didn't he like immediately bolt to France? Which is like famous for like where women are chill with like.
Yes, he went to France, and according to an interview in the like Showtime Comedy Store documentary back in 2020, he like walked into I think a chess store at one point, and the chess store proprietor recognized him and basically told him he was like Jesus. He would have to suffer a lot in order to make his art or something. And he was like, I wish I could just live my life without the suffering.
Yeah.
Eleanor and I were talking just a little while ago about how when the canceling thing, when Me Too begins, there's a sketch on SNL where you have Brigitte Bardot and Catherine Deneuve, and they're talking about how French men have to be this way because it's hot.
Right.
Right? Like Gerard Depardieu has to be a rapist because if he weren't a rapist, there wouldn't be the threat of violence when you're next to him in a room and therefore not as much sexual tension.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see, like...
The French woman mind. This is why they had to invent French feminism. You have to understand, this is why Kristeva was like this. It's because this is what she had to put up with. Yeah.
I've personally never, you know, in all of my years of spending time in France with my French relatives and going to French things and encountering French people, I can tell you, listener, I've never been physically intimidated by a French man.
Okay.
They are short people and none of them can fight. The last Frenchman who knew how to box died in the 19th century. They are not scary people.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So can you tell me more about the timeline, Seth? Like, and in terms of like, you talk about his friends. This is a special that seems like this is a guy who doesn't have any friends, but apparently he has tons of friends.
Yeah, he's friends with basically everyone in comedy. Except for, you know, like Tig Notaro and Pamela Adlon, who distanced themselves after or slightly before the allegations. Yeah. He thanks all of his openers in the credits of the special, and it's a who's who of like who's working in stand-up right now. Yeah. I took a picture of it that I'm looking for on my phone right now.
You know,
somewhere
a comic who has appeared on Eleanor's program about a decade ago.
I was
Dale
just thinking
McPeak.
about this.
Yeah, and then
as I was walking in, I had just texted you to be like, "Can I come on Zoom today?" And as I was walking back into my home, I was like, "She's just a hoe from Logan Square."
I will never forget him calling me the hoe from Logan Square, because I mean, he didn't lie. I was at the time just some hoe from Logan Square, you know. God, that was so funny. Because Seth, for context, Dale McPeak opened for Louis C.K. And
in Rosemont,
and I
in like
commented on Facebook
2 or 3
when he announced it. I commented on Facebook, "Hope it was worth it." That's literally all I said. And he like apparently then like went on a podcast about like talked about shit about me.
Oh, God.
Because he had apparently been on my show and he didn't say anything the entire show. We watched the movie The Swimmer and he didn't say shit. I think because he was like freaked out. So yeah, that was fun.
He's also dumb and a coward.
Yeah. Somehow from Logan Square though was
Classic.
actually like a bar. Like I can't really be mad about that. So Louis C.K.'s friends with everybody in comedy.
And I think it's an underrated part of his comeback is that, COVID happened. Sort of the whole industry briefly shut down or relocated to podcasts. And he and Shane Gillis did a bunch of podcasts together about American history and became good friends.
I've seen these clips.
They're so funny. And Dave Chappelle, did a series of outdoor shows at his home in Yellow Springs, and Louis did a bunch of those. And this, I think, was sort of like a realignment in stand-up of who sort of, well, I guess actually it had been that way sort of the whole time. But Louis got to sort of come back on the sly thanks to people like Shane and Dave and Joe List, his friend and opener, and I forget who else's podcasts he went on. I guess Rogan eventually, and Theo Vaughn, and just everyone. Or in 2018, I think even before he did the Governor's Comedy Club show where he complained about the Parkland kids and pronouns and what have you.
Oh my God.
He did a set at the Legion of Skanks Skankfest and got, I guess it's not technically a standing ovation if everyone is standing anyways because there's no seats. But he was welcomed back early by that sort of seedy underbelly of New York stand-up.
Yeah.
And, who never thought he did anything wrong in the first place.
I have been fascinated throughout this entire thing with him, with how Sarah Silverman, who is like the female version of the kind of guy I was talking about, which is really interesting. It's a very rare subtype. There's a very rare subtype of kind of guy that is a woman that's like that. She is just constantly like saying like, oh, I forgive him. Wait, no, I don't. Free Palestine. Wait, no, not like that. Like she's constantly waffling. That's her like common mode of being. And some of it is just like she's an idiot. She's been smoking weed her entire life. Like her brain doesn't work right. But like some of it is also just like your typical stand-up cowardice. I don't know. She's interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, and he jerked off in front of her a bunch of times.
Oh yeah, she was
with her consent and her sister. But it's unfortunate that so much of the conversation around him has been led by other comedians who just aren't very smart or thoughtful, or
it sucks.
Have internalized so much abuse as a fact of life anyways.
Well, American stand-up has this like weird position where like it doesn't have like the kind of reportage other than like you literally of like any other art form, like they don't really
It makes me crazy.
They don't have like any sort of like there's no like criticism scene. There's no like they're just like it's, and also they like romanticize themselves as like these Byronic heroes who are like, oh, this is a sacred act that I do, and then you can look, it's very sacred and holy that I'm complaining about the Parkland kids. You know what I mean? Like it's
right. They have this art form that is the purest expression of free speech, but also if it upsets anyone, well, it's just a joke, and you can't take a joke.
It's
rhetorically.
mendacious.
And there is no criticism or reporting on it other than maybe Vulture, which doesn't really exist anymore as a vertical.
I do want to take an opportunity to distance myself from Eleanor using the R word, rhetorically mendacious. I don't think it's okay to call people that.
Thank you for calling me in.
It's become popular again lately, though. It's creeping back into it.
Dasha keeps saying it.
Dasha keeps saying it.
Louis' ex-girlfriend, no?
Oh, is that true? I think that is true. That's crazy. Does he like?
I just remember that as like a tweet one day.
Who?
Louis.
That Louis and Dasha were spotted leaving, a restaurant together.
Interesting. I missed that or blocked it out.
Yeah, that's weird. She might be. People are talking about her for the My Year of Rest and Relaxation movie, but I think she's too old.
I think they were photographed getting into a Panzer together.
That makes sense. Tesla. Yeah. Okay. So he's been making the rounds on different podcasts. He's been on Theo Vaughn. You said he performed at Legions of Skanks, which is the Creek in the Cave still around?
It's in Austin now. It relocated either just before or during the pandemic and was sort of Joe Rogan's home base there before he opened his own place.
Has Louis been on Joe Rogan?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me just check when.
Yeah. So he's been, I guess his team is really putting him out there.
Yeah.
That's weird.
2022 and 2024.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. His team, this is one thing we haven't touched on is his manager, Dave Becky, who covered up who allegedly covered up his crimes and kept his victims quiet,
Hmm.
and has gone on just being one of the biggest managers in Hollywood.
Oh, I'd love
But
to hear about
so
that.
they split after the allegations, and he his to
So
the
wait, sorry, the manager facilitated the ongoing cover up and then split when it didn't work.
yes,
Okay.
That's so
basically.
funny.
That is very,
Yeah,
very
and
funny.
John Mulaney then fired him, and a couple other people fired him, and otherwise no one talks about it. What I heard, sort of through back channels, was that through back channels, just through gossip. What I heard through gossip was that as soon as he persuaded Amy Poehler to stay on as his client, like everyone downstream of Amy Poehler was like, "Well,
Oh,
Amy's
yeah.
staying on,"
Yeah. She's got to
and
pay that
he
water bill.
say again.
She's got to pay that water bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he was sort of instrumental too in putting UCB together.
Hmm.
But what was I saying? Oh, his team, I think, is just like him, and he works with a couple promoters who book handle his touring.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of his career is just his own friends and people sticking by him because they don't care about women.
Hmm.
I know I forget if he's been on Tim Dillon's podcast or if he's just good. And Tim has opened for him a bunch. They were on a private plane together when Charlie Kirk got shot, so they got to process that
Oh my goodness.
together. Tim
Wow.
has talked about. He's done, Tom Segura's podcast. Just
That's
that
so
whole.
cool. When
Yeah.
I do the Tim Dillon show, nobody says shit.
Okay.
Okay,
I
I'm
will.
gonna do a great job.
Oh my God. So that is actually the concept of them on a private plane when Charlie Kirk gets killed is
Yeah, a
unfortunately
PJ.
extremely hilarious. What a disappointment. So wait, tell me more. What's the manager's name?
Dave Becky, who
Okay. Oh, it's like
was
okay.
he's a partner at Three Arts, which
Okay.
is one of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
big comedy cartels that, because it's a management company, it can both manage comedians and produce shows.
A
And so
cartel.
he's like a producer on It's Always Sunny and
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Yeah.
And according to the Times story, it was, I think, after the Colorado or Denver Comedy Festival thing where he jerked off in front of Dana and Julia in a hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
They heard from Dave Becky that they should keep quiet about it. And because he was such a powerful person then and now, that sort of immediately put them out of the running for a lot of different jobs. It was
Mm-hmm.
never anything overt, they said, but they just knew if they were to submit for X or Y, they didn't think they would get a chance.
Hmm.
And when the story came out and Louis said, "It's all true. I'm sorry to," or he didn't say sorry. He just was like, I regret putting everyone through this, including my manager, Dave Becky, who was just trying to mediate a situation I caused. Dave Becky put out his own statement that was to the effect of he thought he was just trying to keep quiet infidelity. He just, didn't know that
Interesting.
he was what he was doing exactly. And there were a bunch of things in it that didn't really add up. He said he had never heard anything bad about Louis at all, which doesn't really make sense since these rumors were floating around for
For years.
years.
Yeah.
And anyways,
Oh
I
no, this
remember
is
these
comforting.
rumors.
It's nice to know that somebody remembered that he was also unfaithful to his wife.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Like that seems to be the least important part of the story.
Wasn't he also like on the record for having like called his wife a cunt or something at some point? Louis C.K. did. I remember that.
You might be thinking
I
of his
remember-
next
remember that.
special.
Almost certainly, probably into a microphone.
Oh yeah. Okay, can I I want to talk about something I want to talk about Mulaney and Louis and like as sort of like Warriors. I think that like they're both sort of like geniuses, as Taylor said. They've been codified as such. But John Mulaney's transgressions played out very, very differently and of a different sort than Louis. And I don't know. I want to for you to maybe talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you think that Louis and like Mulaney and their arcs and their journeys and their careers sort of compare against each other?
Um, it's not something that I've thought about in depth, but I mean, it is interesting that Mulaney is also sort of a conventional storyteller, observational stand-up of the type that I said at the beginning of things I don't really plug into. And I do really like Mulaney, and I think he's very funny,
too,
and
yeah.
he's silly in a way that is the polar opposite of,
Yes, the silliness is so important.
yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it is a dark silliness. There's a darkness undergirding it that I guess made it not a huge surprise to me, though I guess it was more broadly a surprise when he went into treatment for addiction. And then again, I didn't. I was bought in by that infamous Seth Meyers show where he was wearing sunglasses and talking about the royal family, and in retrospect, clearly on something. And I was just totally like, "This is a fun bit. I love this bit." So egg on my face. What was the question?
I was just like, what do you think of
Warrior-
Mulaney in relationship to Louis in terms of like the kinds of transgressions they've committed? I think that Mulaney represents like he's sort of like the great white hope, you know, and we're like kind of rooting for him as much as we possibly can. I also think the thing that I love about John Mulaney's work so much, and I've said this before on the show, that I think his whole thing is, isn't it funny that I look like this when I feel like this? Like, isn't it so ridiculous that like I look like this and yet I feel like,
Well, they both have a thing where they're sort of like struggling to handle the contradictions
Yes.
of being men.
yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's about this like crisis of masculinity of the 21st century, and these people feeling alienated from themselves, mostly because they are like more male than they want to be.
Yeah. And it's, I think, also like this disidentification with the privilege, with the obligations that they have as privileged members of society that they just don't want to be culpable for and responsible for. That plays through, and it's kind of also really endemic, I think, to stand-up comedy as a type of performing art. One thing I write about in my work is like about how, you know, there's that book by John Lyman, Stand-Up Comedy or Objection in America. It's about this sort of like relationship to the void, and there's also kind of fundamental narcissism to the format where it's like it's the only art form where like it's just one person presenting typically as themselves, talking about what they think to an audience who doesn't know what to expect. Like that's crazy. That's like exemplary, I think, of like the sort of male protagonist of reality syndrome that so many of these guys have. Again, I do like stand-up comedy. I do. I love it. I think it's very interesting. I think it's the most human art form in this sense, and that's why I criticize it so thoroughly.
But so then is comedy the product of dysfunctional masculinity, or did masculinity get dysfunctional because of stand-up comedy?
I don't know.
I'm throwing a flag on that play. False analogy, false dichotomy.
Yeah, I also don't think stand-up comedy is like specifically a male thing. I think that women do this too.
Yes, you've written about it in your PhD thesis.
Yes, my dissertation. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is an art form where people commit to driving themselves insane.
Yeah.
Just by, and others have said this better than me, and I'm sure it's true of other art forms too.
Well,
but
it's similar to
getting
poetry.
positive feedback over and over and over and over again to the point that it completely rewrites your brain.
Well, it's similar to the lyric, I think, specifically the lyric form of poetry. I think stand-up has a lot in common with that. There's also
Say more about that.
the lyric is about like it's about the fact of addressing. You're addressing something in someone, but it's sort of amorphous and unclear what that is and who that is, and that's kind of the point. You can't be too specific about it, otherwise it's not going to resonate. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think like the boy wonder aspect of it all is really important for both of them in terms of their legacies. And I think they resent that.
They're both gifted children who didn't work out.
Well, I mean, who apparently did work out, but it's again the type of guy who's just like, well, I got everything I wanted and fuck you, you know? It's an anti-sociality that is only made possible by being incredibly known and making yourself known.
I have a question about this particular issue here. Now, Seth, I hope that you don't mind being the expert one more time.
Of course.
Now, the movie that Louis made right before he was canceled, the one that never came out, the title of it escapes me. Something to do with baby.
I Love You, Daddy.
I Love You, Daddy. There you are. All right. Now, apparently he used his own money for this. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And he lost all of it. So how much of his desire to like come back from cancellation was a material need based on having lost all the money that he spent on that movie, and how much of it was a more emotional need that came from like the only thing he ever wants to do or be is a stand-up comedian?
I'm not entirely sure because I don't know exactly how much that movie cost. I and I also don't believe a lot of the discourse surrounding him about the amount of money he supposedly lost when he was canceled. He
Oh,
has said
yeah.
he lost 35 million in a matter of hours.
No way.
Why should I believe you? Show me
Well,
your
and the
audited.
way wealthy people talk about their money too, it's
Yeah.
never liquid.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
and he like has a number of homes. I know that's I believe I shouldn't say things I don't have the numbers to offhand, but I know he owns or owned a number of properties. He was a landlord,
Like
and
Hannibal Buress.
Hannibal stole his
Yes.
bit. Yeah.
His perfume brand plummeted in value. Suddenly, no one wanted to smell like that anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he wants to make money. And I know he has been because he's been selling out large theaters, which, a comedian who can sell out a large theater can make six figures in a weekend. But he also, this is back to the Theo Vaughn podcast. And again, it's difficult to take him at his word, but you have to imagine there is sort of some psychological truth, however twisted, in whatever he's saying. He told Theo over and over in that spiel about wanting to say he's sorry that he has work that he believes in and he thinks is worthy and he wants to share it with the world. He loves the work. It would not seem implausible to me that he is a workaholic and that this is sort of the thing in his life that he finds meaning in.
He doesn't even have time to have sex.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Exactly.
He also was like the thing that really impressed me about him back in the day was that he would like do an hour and then throw it completely in the garbage, and the following year do another hour.
Yeah, he was like the innovator, I think, of that approach to comedy.
Yeah.
That
At the
became
time,
sort
he
of
said
the
he was
norm.
inspired by Carlin. Because
Yeah.
Carlin back in the 90s was doing an hour a year.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I just want to make a quick comment. So, like Pete Campbell, when I said the lyric as comedy thing, there actually is a book by Callista McRae called Lyric as Comedy that came out in 22. But I came up with that analogy before that, so I came up to it independently.
yeah.
I just wanted to say that I'm not like reading anyone's nachos. Okay.
I actually want one of those guitars like Pete Campbell has with the like name on the frets, but I want mine to say Pete Campbell as well.
That would be so weird. Yeah. Okay. So, what are other like liberal Obama era scandalized comedians? I'm sure
Well, there's Aziz.
Aziz was that seemed like he was just a bad date.
He has such bad luck. Did anybody else notice that he makes this movie that comes out and is supposed to be his path back to the mainstream, right? And he's promoting it everywhere. And Alamo Drafthouse has him do
I remember that,
the interstitials like during the pre-show programming where he's like telling you when to put your phone away and stuff. And he's like essentially the last guy who gets to tell Alamo audiences to put their phone away because now you can you have to use your phone.
Which is why I don't go to the Alamo anymore.
Yeah, I haven't been in months.
Yeah.
It's very unpleasant.
Yeah, it sucks.
I mean, it was a bad date, but I think it was a bad date in the sense that he kept chasing this girl around his apartment, sticking his fingers down her throat, and then groping her after she said, "No, I don't want that."
Okay.
And a bunch of other non-consensual
So
things
a kind of Jersey Kaczynski kind of bad date.
that then undermined his entire sort of persona of being sort of the woke feminist guy
Well, yeah,
who wrote
also,
a book about dating as a millennial.
do think he also, I mean, while he's guilty, I do think he was also sort of unfairly compared to other people.
Yeah.
Condemned because he's an Indian guy, he's a brown guy, and so they were like, well, that's easy to we can just excise him from life. So I think that he was definitely tokenized in that way, but obviously not an excuse, just a reaction, just a reality that happened.
One of the few famous people from South Carolina. I just want to point that out.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That's funny.
Where's he from?
Sorry, go ahead.
Where's he from in South
No,
Carolina?
he grew up outside of Columbia, is my understanding.
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, it blows.
My professor in the program I just graduated, Terrence Hayes, told me in our last office hours that he ran into Aziz at a party in London where Aziz lives now. And they got to talking because they're both from South Carolina and have known each other for a while.
So Aziz Ansari, who else?
What, the canceled comedians?
Yeah, canceled.
There wasn't a lot. It wasn't a lot of people.
I remember when the UCB exposure happened, and then it was fine. Remember that? Yeah.
Which UCB exposure?
Good question. I guess the one when we were still in the early 2010s.
There were a few in a row, right? I mean, that was your beat for a while, right, Seth? I mean, you wrote an enormous amount about this. The last thing I recall was they sold the business to a trust.
They sold it to it's either venture capital or private equity, venture VC, to the Dodgers equity arm and the Onion.
Okay.
So
but
now,
I thought, by exposure, did you mean the many teachers who expose themselves to students, or?
Oh, I was just talking specifically about the whole like pyramid scheme.
Well, there's the sex crimes and there's the financial crimes,
right.
And then there's like
labor-ish law.
Yeah, they pay. You have to pay to take the class.
And
that should be illegal.
And the way it was so normal, and everyone thought it was like a gift. It reminded me. This is around the same time where like I knew people who were applying for the MA in performance studies at NYU, where I'm like, okay, so you're gonna go into debt for $90,000 to maybe get into the PhD program later. Like at NYU, because basically the performance studies at NYU PhD program, you only basically get in, with a very few exceptions, if you get the MA first, which is like a cash cow thing. So yeah, there was just like the 2010s were just, we were surrounded by people who were just like doing stuff like that. It was weird.
My like, those first like 5 years of me writing about comedy, it went from people at UCB getting really mad at me for calling them exploited, to a few years later getting mad at me for reporting too invasively on their exploitation, to eventually I think I finally won the argument and then got messed up in all this racist comedy stuff, and just keep graduating to angrier and angrier groups.
Well, there was a limit as to what improv could ever really recover, right?
Yeah.
Because improv is bad, and people who see improv being performed are aware of the fact that the thing that they are looking at isn't good.
Taylor, who was the comic at your show the other night who talked about, this is about stand-up, about how stand-up's the only art form where we're like, keep the energy going.
Yes.
Everybody.
Aaron McDavis's joke was like, you're not at a strip club, and the MC says, okay, guys, we only got a few strippers left. Let's get the energy going.
Yeah, she's going to try something new tonight, folks. Yeah.
So funny.
Shout out Aaron McDavis.
Yeah, but that's also, I guess, also true for improv, too. You do that. You hear that, too. Yeah, so I guess UCB was like a broader phenomenon, but then it's also like Amy Poehler got more heat for the watering her lawn than she got for the UCB stuff.
I would love it if she had gotten more heat for the UCB stuff. Yeah. She just created a wage theft scheme that was probably one of the most successful in entertainment.
Comedy history,
Well, each of these things, it's from the very beginning, it's about getting a little bit of prestige, getting a little bit of success, making a few friends, step by step, building brick by brick until you have the capacity to start a podcast that can win a Golden Globe. That's the end game. That's what we're trying to do.
We're trying really hard, team.
Oh, yeah.
I'm picking up on a thread here, and if I could have a quick ISO ball possession, I'm wondering, like, there's two threads that keep coming up for me throughout this conversation is when we're talking about we have like potential improv students, comedy fans, like whatever, the naive on this one side who like love comedy. Maybe they believe in it as a force for good or at least positivity. They want to practice it. They want to consume it. And then over here on the other side, we have the UCB type of people. IO here in Chicago had a similar scandal about 10 years ago. Louis C.K., who's like making his bits about how men are dangerous whole time he's a dangerous man. We have these two polarities, right, between the naive and the like lovers of comedy and versus the people who are actually successful at it and are the best at it, seem to come over and just like vultures. I have the very amusing zoom feature turned on my camera right now, so it keeps doing, I'm trying to gesture with my hands and it keeps zooming in on my face, excuse me. The vultures come and like see this goodness radiating out of the naive and they just take it.
Yes, absolutely. And first thing, Sharna shows up in the Louis C.K. story. IO founder Sharna's
in the files.
Yeah, she was at the festival where Louis preyed on Dana, Min Goodman, and Julia Wolof, and they ran into her later and asked her for help, and she was just like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to tell them what to do. And
Well, and she learned that move from being with Del Close.
yes.
Right. Well, when we talk about Charna, we should remember that she possibly was the first woman groomed by improv.
Well, you also know the
True.
most important rule of improv is to always say, I don't know, when answering questions.
Yes, and I do think it is true that the story of this art form is people who dearly love it and want to make something that gives pleasure to themselves and other people, and they just get ruthlessly preyed on by either the systems that feed off of their art or the people those systems are designed to empower, who are sociopaths,
I
who
wanna
sort of have to be a
comment-
sociopath.
I want to comment on the fact that the only things in this world that I personally am good at are all evil. Like, I'm good at writing theory. I'm good at improv. I'm good at singing opera music. Like, those are like every single skill set I have is bad.
You should see Eleanor hand her keys to a valet. Like, she does it better than anybody who's ever lived. It's like the Michael Jordan of
Yeah, it's true.
telling them not to touch the radio.
I have a historical question. All right. As a child, I recall watching, Chaplin when it came out. Of course, I was thrilled. I was 6 years old. Couldn't wait to go see
I
Chaplin.
literally can't tell if you're kidding or not.
It's absolutely exactly what happened. And then, it begins with Chaplin as a little boy seeing his mother sexually pleasuring the owner of a club in order to get a spot. Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, we should talk about moms of stand-up comedians because there's a lot.
Okay, but so it's my understanding in the 19th century that there was some sort of a conceptual or practical relationship between sex work and being a performer on stage in America and or England.
Yeah, no, Tracy Davis writes about this. Yeah.
Okay, so this is my question. Did stand-up learn how to be sex pests from vaudeville? Or did stand-up arrive at it independently like you with the bit about the...
Lyric is poetry.
Yeah.
I bet... I don't know. I think there's something that... I think it's the latter, because the way that stand-up comedians are sex pests is always deeply specific to their whole deal, to the individual doing it. You know what I mean? It's not like Harvey Weinstein. That's like a system,
I think it is the case, though, that this is a ways out from the 19th century, but both the Improv and the Comedy Store, the owners traded stage time for sex. And one has to imagine that goes back, but that's, I think, endemic to just how
That's just how
businesses function.
So this is a question not of capital, but of social capital.
I also think it is capital because I think if we funded the arts, maybe we wouldn't have some of these issues. I don't know.
Well, the thing that people have said for a very long time, going, back to when UCB was getting started in New York in the 90s, right, was that the only people who could afford to do all this shit for free were rich kids. Which meant that insisting that there was no material compensation for anybody at the beginning of this, it more or less pushed poor people out of comedy. When comedy had traditionally been the place where you go when sixth grade is too difficult academically for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like Bert Lahr,
There's a long tradition of just guys who can't read becoming comedians.
Bert Lahr is one of my favorite examples. He Taylor, if you don't know, he also played the lion, the Cowardly Lion in Wizard of Oz. He did a production of what was it? I think it was The Birds, the Greek play The Birds. And he didn't really know how to read, so he had to learn the lines phonetically, and then also he didn't really understand them. And so this production that he did in the 60s of The Birds is infamous because it's completely misunderstands everything about the play. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's really interesting. I love it when sort of ignorance becomes a weird tool for creativity. It's why I love teaching students where English is their second language, because they don't know any of the cliches, and so they're constantly innovating from the ground up. It's cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, I am contractually required to bring this up twice an episode, but it reminds me of Dracula Flo reading this AAV that he has no idea what.
Exactly.
The actor has never heard it before. He's never called somebody slime before. And so the way
Shit
he
ain't
delivers the
nothing to me,
line
man.
is just so unreplicatable.
Well, it's folk art is what it is.
I don't mean to poo-poo this line of questioning, but I think when you, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here to you three, but all of American pop culture, all of the entertainment industry is minstrelsy.
Yes.
Right. It started there.
It's
and so
all the
when
way
we're
down.
asking ourselves, like, has the apple been rotten right to the core? Probably.
As Charlie X
Probably.
pointed out.
Were there any systemic injustices present in the minstrel circuit? Whatever there were, if there were, I wasn't there. I can't guess. Who's to know? I'm blind and stupid. And so, yes, is the answer to that question, right?
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And when I started my master's program in theater history, I was quickly educated in how it is literally an American art form that then became internationalized, and it is like the entirety of our deal as a performance culture in the United States of America.
Eleanor tried to make me wear white gloves for this podcast. I said no.
Yeah.
She didn't like that.
Okay, other institutions that were Me Too'd that we could come up with? What about, Amy Schumer kind of, wasn't Me Too'd, obviously, but she just sort of became cringe, I guess.
Amy Schumer can't win in this debate because she fired Kurt Metzger, which was at the time the wokest thing that had ever happened in comedy.
Yes, that's right.
Well, but she said she didn't fire him. She said they were just on hiatus. She wouldn't even give herself the credit for that.
She wouldn't even say that. That's so funny.
Yeah, no, Trainwreck 2 is coming out next spring.
I actually really enjoyed Trainwreck when I saw it. But it did do the thing where if a character is a writer, you never want to show the character's actual writing. You don't want to see the character's writing because it's always going to be bad.
Like the paintings.
Annie Baker play the aliens, the writer character.
What do you say?
It's like in Annie Baker's The Aliens. There's the one character who is writing a book, and we hear his book at one point before he, spoiler alert, dies, and it's a good book, and I like that she made him a good writer.
Yeah, and that's very difficult to do. You know, it's a hard.
It's like the one exception.
Well, the struggle is when you have to go across media, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're making a movie about a painter, and you're good at movies, but you're not good at painting, so you don't know how to make the painter good at painting.
Right.
And so then you end up like the end of Blue's the Warmest Color, where we have been building up to seeing the paintings, and then the paintings are bad.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Which is a shame.
Yeah.
I have comedy questions if next time we have a lull in the threads here.
Yeah, please go.
Well, it going back to my dichotomy about the believers versus the practitioners, I wonder, Seth, if you can speak to this. There must be something good worth fighting for, not to be like Samwise Gamgee on the outside the Shelob's cage, but like if there wasn't any good or beauty in this medium or this industry, there would be no reason to protest the conditions. There would be nothing to critique, right? And so what is it that is worth fighting for? I struggle, frankly, to see it.
Can I say I'm a big fan. I've been a big fan my whole life. One of my earliest memories is, sitting down with my family in the living room and watching the stand-up comedy hour that they used to show on MTV in like 1990. And it would always come on right after the end of them having shown the music video for November Rain by Guns N' Roses. And so then, you're sitting with the family and you're watching these people tell jokes for an hour. And, I personally, from a theoretical perspective, I think that the thing that comedy can do is that it can bring people together by demonstrating that you are not the only person who noticed that this thing is dumb.
Yeah, that's what
right?
I like about it too.
When we were talking about Adorno, one of the things that he said was super alienating about contemporary life in the 20th century was that everywhere you look, you are presented with a world that would not be this way if people's values were reflected in the world that we live in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we have instead a world where it is not shaped by human values, despite humans feeling like we shaped the entire world from beginning to end. And so then we point out the little places where, it be that way.
Yeah.
And pointing out that it be that way makes us feel less like hopeless and alone because they're like, oh, you noticed that it be that way too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you consider the comedy then to be downstream a knock-on effect of class society, right? Because in a class society, the majority of people are going to be the underclass, and society is not going to be organized rationally to them.
Yeah,
right.
It's an undercommons.
Well, that was what, like, okay, so I'll go back a little bit. In 2001, I interviewed Matt Walsh, the UCB guy, at the UCB in New York City. And, I asked him this, and he said, comedy is just the people at the bottom yelling about the people at the top.
Interesting thing for Matt Walsh to say.
Well, yeah, but this was 2001, so he hadn't done all that shit yet.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it is necessarily a class thing, because it seems like it was a thing that existed for all of human culture. And even when there weren't like codified classes and we were still doing primitive accumulation and all this, I think that it has to do with specifically the idea that like we're all sort of more or less trapped inside of our own brains, and the brain has this capacity to like make sense of complicated inputs and turn something out on the other side that has like ideology. And so, the things that matter the most to people are the huge problems of society.
I think of the stand-up community and the fandom as like, I have no mouth and I must scream, like scenario. Like that's just what we're all doing,
Right. So it's like a coping mechanism for living in hell.
Yeah. And it's about disidentification, right? I wanted to also call to attention. So Seth has been watching the show that I have also been watching, and Andre's watched it too. It's the new TV show of Cape Fear. And the thing that made me think about it in relationship to the Louis special is the Cape Fear is about predators. One thing it is, it's like Max Cady is a predator, but so is Amy Adams and Patrick Wilson. So is like the legal system. So is like even like the foundation that she works for is a kind of predator. And I don't know. I was just interested in thinking about how like our current moment is about, and performance culture and cross mediums seems to be predators. I just wanted to say that.
Well, the predator is the high status person in an individualist society. If everybody is here entirely on their own, we're all out here alone trying to make it in a world that's trying to devour us, then the predator is the person who devours. Right?
Yeah.
And then we see over and over again over the last 20 years stories about somebody deciding to become the predator, and then that doesn't work out for them.
Or also, like, I saw the Louis C.K.'s, like, he's post-devourment. Like, okay, you have devoured. What do you do now?
He's devoured, and he's been devoured. He's lived past the end of his story.
Yeah, I think so.
And
knock on wood. I mean, we'll see.
They're just handing out second acts in American lives everywhere you look these days.
I have been livid at the coverage for this thing where everybody is saying that he's atoned when he has not.
He hasn't.
Where's citation needed? Like, it's ridiculous.
Bad Catholic.
Yeah.
I think this is sort of the story of comedy post Me Too, post pandemic. Is there's just so much shit that it's easier to just pretend the comics narrative of the thing happened than to look at what actually happened, which is that a bunch of predators and racists muscled their way back while the world was shut down because of a disease that also nobody wants to think about, that killed millions of people.
Well, stand-up does teach you this skill of being like, what actually happened doesn't matter so much as being able to indulge in the good story version of what happened.
Also, there's this common narrative where somehow it seems to matter how much time has passed. It's like, oh, but that was a long time ago. Okay. Like, it reminds me of that scene, and there's a scene...
All of that shit happened after Roman Polanski had sex with that 13-year-old.
Yeah, there's a scene in the movie Sorry Baby where she has like a PTSD sort of attack after her rape. She in a car, and she like runs into this like New England guy, this older guy who helps her out, and she says, something really awful happened to me, and he says, how long ago was it? And she says, about 3 years, and he says, that's not such a long time. And then she says, yeah, that's not such a long time. And it's like, yeah, that isn't really such a long time, because this is the kind of thing that's in excess of time,
Yeah.
It's just a sort of foundational thing. So yeah, I just wanted to.
Well, you know what makes time pass a little bit slower is when no one does anything to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That can make 3 years feel like forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that's particularly nefarious about comedy and comedy's predators to me is that, comedy is this, I do think it is a beautiful art form that is worth fighting for. But, people
Are you
like
Morgan
comedy
Freeman at
because,
the end of Seven? Like,
but, comedy, it short circuits the brain. It, stops you from thinking rationally
Yeah.
because you're feeling joy and feeling pleasure, and we tend to want to forgive and to like and to overlook the flaws of the people who make us feel that.
Yeah.
And I think it's so evil how all of these predators and racists and Nazis in comedy are using that power,
yeah.
and especially turning it against their victims. I've talked to Louis' victims, and they don't want to say anything publicly because they can't without sort of unleashing a torrent of hate and harassment from his fans. The fans of the person who said he did the thing they said he did. It's so depressing and bleak.
I think it's also
to me.
true for music. I think we have a tendency as human beings to give special leeway to people who make us laugh or people who like entertain us or make beautiful music. Like,
Yeah.
like with Michael Jackson too. Like, we need to come like Michael Jackson was a serial pedophile who's also maybe one of the greatest entertainers in American
Yeah.
history. Like, those things are both true.
This is the fantasy of monarchies, right? Like, we want to imagine that there is such a thing as a job that is so important that if you are good at it, you get to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
My most atavistic feeling that I know is not true is that I do think that having a beautiful singing voice, like, you can get away with shit. Like, if you are, like, for some reason that particular thing is like, I sort of believe, I don't actually believe that, like, I logically know that isn't true, but like, I don't know, there's just something to me about like a beautiful voice that I'm just like, well,
Yeah. And that's the thing that makes me so mad with comedy too, is that, okay, you're gonna make all of these moral carve-outs for people who are like, I took an AIDS test and I have AIDS. Ah.
Yeah.
It's not even a beautiful singing voice. It's
Right.
not even Mozart.
Exactly.
Or what have you.
Exactly.
I remember I spent some time at the Comedy Cellar right before the pandemic interviewing the owner for stuff that I never ended up writing because the pandemic happened. But there was one bit where we were talking and he was telling me that, the world would be so terrible if I got my way, if comedy operated according to my politics or whatever, we would never get the Louis C.K. bit where he says the N-word. And I'm just like, okay, so what?
Yeah.
That
Yeah, but
seems
that's-
fine.
yeah, that's
so many of these comedians are just replacement level. I don't think the world would be terribly different if instead of Louis C.K. we had some other person excising their innermost self.
It's also just like a bastardization of like the Carlinization of everything, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
the comedian's the shaman who's like speaking truth to power, and it's like, no, you're just talking, man. You're not even talking to anybody. You're just
Yeah.
talking.
But this is the role of the philosopher king, right? Plato's idea of the ideal ruler, the ideal authoritarian, is that this is a person who has the biggest, most beautiful brain and therefore understands everything in the world and therefore gets to, in a Nietzschean way, operate outside of morality.
Yeah.
They get to, you want the authoritarian to be the person who doesn't need the rules in order to live their life.
But that's why stand-up is such a useful way for thinking about like our current power structure, because that's exactly how Peter Thiel behaves. That's exactly how Elon Musk behaves. They believe that they are sort of preordained to operate whatever way they want to.
But it is also what people want from Zoran Mamdani.
Yeah.
They project fantasies onto him that he's going to be Stalin, that he's going to, come in and throw all the cars out of Manhattan and, build a socialist utopia in New York City. But he seems mostly concerned with making sure people know how to avoid their apartment getting flooded, or like people know that the swimming pools are open an hour and a half later. Like, he's not interested in being a wealthy, powerful authoritarian because he has like ideals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has values.
It seems like there's a thing going back a very long time with this idea that like nobody who wants the job should have it. And like nobody who wants the job of being a stand-up comedian should be allowed to be a stand-up comedian.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm so interested in the period in the 2010s that we call the second comedy boom, where it's sort of the gates opened slightly to people who weren't sort of conventional stand-ups, both in that they didn't tell observational humor on stage, and in terms of their identity, people who wouldn't otherwise make it at comedy clubs that favor white men.
The stuff that we used to see at Hot Tub when we would go to Littlefield.
Oh, yeah. Remember Kristen Shaw would do the whoopee cushion thing?
Oh, yeah.
I loved that. What was I going to say?
Wyatt Cenac's show, Night Train, as well.
I loved that show. I remember going to the Halloween show, and Ted Leo closed out, and it was actually at the Wyatt Cenac show. It was Halloween, and someone showed up. A white guy showed up dressed as Little Black Sambo, and and Wyatt Cenac was like, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "Because I wanted to get your attention." And the crowd we all just collectively got that guy out of there. It was just it was
Amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just like, "Why are you here?" And then he was just gone, in seconds. Yeah. Do you remember that, Andre?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I maybe if CISO had stuck around, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in.
CISO, you were our one hope. Yeah.
I mean, I do hold UCB responsible for a lot of that, in that it turned the pipeline into a house of cards during a crucial period. Or I guess it also was sort of responsible for that period.
House of cards meaning as in the molestation.
And that the pipeline to a career in Hollywood was dependent on this unsustainable business that also taught people to work for less and seek work at a bunch of other unsustainable businesses where they had to devalue themselves. There's probably some chicken and egg stuff.
But if it
involved
weren't
in my
for
theory.
that, we wouldn't have Jason Mantzoukas on Taskmaster.
It's true. Or occasional voice roles in American Dad.
So who's to say if it's good or bad?
Who's to say?
This makes me think too, and I've been thinking about this in relation to Louis and a lot of comedians, of the Jay Kelly, was that a Baumbach movie that was on Netflix a while ago?
It was supposed to get nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and everybody was supposed to think it was the best thing that Clooney ever did.
Yeah,
and it came and went, and nobody gave
forgot
a shit.
at the crucial moment. They forgot to nominate it. But there's a bit where the Clooney character, who's basically playing a famous George Clooney type actor, at going to a retrospective of his career, and we gradually see that he really has no friends other than the people who work for him, and he ignores his children. And there's a bit where he's trying to get his daughter to come to this retrospective, and he's like, "You have to come. If you don't, it'll all have been for nothing." And she's like, "Well, okay, well, maybe it was for nothing." And I think I feel that way about a lot of stand-up comedy and a lot of this art form that fans would go to great lengths to defend. But I see Louis again telling that joke about AIDS, and I'm like, okay, maybe this was actually for nothing. Maybe, and that's sort of why you still have to be a good person. It's because the art is really it's replacement level. It's not indispensable. Not anyone, but a lot of people could do it.
I do feel like being a stand-up comedy fan is a lot like how I feel like fans of Midwest emo feel. Like, we are an underclass. We are looked down upon because we love dumb shit, Like, it's just, or like people who listen to hardcore. Like, there are certain like genres of music, like where it's like, yeah, I like the Lawrence Arms. Like, and you have to say it with like an apology in your voice. And it's like, yeah, I like stand-up comedy.
Well, it doesn't even feel 20th century to me. It feels 19th century because it's this thing that depends so much on a person talking to another group of people. Stand-up has, in certain ways, rejected technology over and over again. In certain ways, it's been dependent on technology, as you've written about.
Yes, it is a primarily oral medium. It is consumed via recordings and audio files. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that the fact that so much of it is tied to this like liveness and presence is a thing that may end up turning it into a relic of the past. And like, I just don't see how it works in a more virtual future. Like, what, are people going to go into some VR environment and watch somebody do stand-up comedy?
No, I think that stand-up comedy is going to be a subculture the way it is now.
Or like skateboarding?
Yeah. It'll be like, a relic that we keep around because it keeps us alive,
It is so inexpensive to produce stand-up specials, though.
Yeah.
Which is probably the reason that Netflix continues to do it.
Although the Alex Timbersification of stand-up specials are kind of annoying to me. Like, they're all the same now. There's, like, nothing really special or exciting.
Though I did see that people noticed online that in Louis' special, there are no shots of the audience.
Isn't there at the... Oh, yeah, because they don't want to be seen.
I think it is a formal thing. I think it really just is because his thing is not... He's so clearly not interested in whether or not people like it.
It's so cynical. In that sense, it's like actually right on the mark in terms of its timeliness. And it's hack is what makes it timely, because everything is hack now.
I think if you cut from his like sneering face to some like 25-year-old white guy cackling like a jackal in the audience, I think it builds this dialectic between them that makes the whole thing so much darker.
I think that's probably true. I think that's true. It's like at the end of King of Comedy, like when Rupert Pupkin is like doing his act and you realize that actually he's kind of good at it.
The end, he's funny.
He actually is kind like he's very like
he gets some good laughs at the end of that.
I've seen some like definite like open mics that were like on like quality, that kind of quality. Like, he's not actually that bad, and to me that's like the darkest part of the movie is that Rupert Pupkin isn't actually that bad at comedy. Yeah.
Unlike say in Joker where he
is bad, yeah.
He's never funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my god.
So I had asked Seth to speak on what good is worth fighting for in comedy.
I mean, I do think it is this beautiful thing that brings people together for reasons that have been articulated here. And that's part of why I think I don't like the special as a medium as much as, I mean, I think it loses that crucial live element of being in a room with other people that I do feel is so special to theater and to comedy.
Do you consider comedy a form of theater? Like it's under that umbrella?
I think so. Yeah. I wrote a hierarchy of my personal hierarchy of which art forms are better than other art forms, and I have comedy under theater. It's a little silly joke for myself, but I mean, I think there are people who are doing good and interesting work. I'm really into like Joe Pera or Kate Berlant or Connor O'Malley.
I love Connor O'Malley.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like something avant-garde. I hope I'm not crazy to say.
No.
Not at all.
But what depresses me so much about comedy these days is I think they are the minority. Perhaps they've always been the minority. And I think I brought up the comedy boom because it seemed like a period that might have shifted things such that they weren't in the minority anymore. But I think we're now in a period of like revenge by all of the people who are getting pushed out, who are now ascendant and multimillionaires. And I
really like that. I like your analysis. I mean, not the thing you're describing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to sell a book about it, and it's difficult.
I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, though.
Yeah, I mean, I have to believe things get better because otherwise, there's no reason to do anything.
I'm glad you said that because that's my next question. Actually, when you brought up your list of, the most cutting edge, most enjoyable avant-garde comedians, I mean, that list you gave was also true with those exact same names 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm constantly feeling like there was a time where I left comedy behind. I didn't even consume comedy for a couple years after the 2016 election or so.
Yeah.
And I've felt like ever since I came back to it, I'm like, we're just kind of stuck in time here, aren't we?
And that's also what I want to write this book about. But I think the pipeline has fallen apart. There isn't the pathways. There aren't the pathways into it that there used to be. There's Kill Tony. There's the Rogan podcast. Comedy Central doesn't make specials anymore. Netflix barely makes specials anymore and makes comics shoulder the production costs.
Our institutions are eroding. Isn't that true of everything? Like, it's just there's no institutional structures anymore.
Yeah. Everything does seem to have fallen apart in a way that I don't know what this solution will be other than it all falling apart so thoroughly that we have to get together and rebuild. I mean, my personal theory of what the ideal version of comedy as an industry and an art form looks like is it does sort of get back to a local thing where you don't need to become famous in order to distribute your work to an audience, where every locality has its own self-sustainable UCB and comedy club where people can sort of make that risky work that is supposedly the excuse for why UCB doesn't have to pay, because you're taking so many risks there that it might be bad that an audience wouldn't want to pay for it. But I think that just is most comedy. That just is most interesting work. Is it is a risky thing that might not succeed. That it sort of has to be that in order to be its best or to fulfill its promise. So I dream of a world where the art form exists self-sustainably at a community level, where also in this idealized world there's healthcare and public arts funding and everything else that makes it possible for arts institutions to exist like that.
But is there anything that is like microbreweries or music scenes where there are things like that in every community, but then it never leads to mass culture? Because it seems like anything that exists on that kind of a scale is never, it's never walled off into these private communities. There's always the possibility, or at least the promise, that there's going to be
Yeah, I mean, I'm pessimistic on this utopia ever happening because people just want to be famous, and I don't know that I guess I do blame people for that, but I also can't blame people for that. I exist in a superposition of blaming, but not being able to blame them for that.
There is a thing that people do locally.
Clown?
Well, there's...
No, go ahead.
You guys
let's touch on clowning in a moment, though.
I don't know enough about clowning to talk about clowning.
You about the emails I get periodically for this thing called Dark Clown courses in England, where it's like about learning how to clown as an emergent practice. It's so good. I really want to do it one day. Dark clown.
Dark clown. I love it.
An emergent dark clown. Like, it's darkness, and then you just see the red nose.
Yes. Oh, my God. I mean, I think I agree with you, Seth, about the state of the special as a unit. The last special I saw that really, knocked my socks off was probably Rothaniel. I can't really think of anything else.
Stand-up on video is not as good, though. It just doesn't.
I'd rather listen to it.
It's not the same.
I'd rather just listen to it. This is my whole thing. I'd rather just listen to it.
But there, from a Friedrich Kittler perspective, one of the things about the form of the stand-up special is that it's shaped first by vinyl records, as you've written about in your dissertation, but then also later on, the hour format comes from it being a broadcast television thing.
Exactly. So it's technologically
it has to fit into a schedule, but that hasn't been true for decades. So why is it an hour?
I do think it's interesting that people talk. We've just been talking about what the thing we like about stand-up is it's this fresh liveness thing about it. But the thing is, for the vast majority of its existence, people were just listening to the record over and over and over again. Like when I was a kid, I used to listen to George Carlin CDs with my dad over and over and over again. It was like the pleasure was part of was the knowing of what's going to happen next. Like I used to watch the Eddie Izzard Circle special constantly.
I've seen it dozens of times.
I've seen it so many times and just be like, oh yeah, this part's really good. It's like there is a pleasure in the repetition to it too. And it feels like
shout the fuck out, sorry, to Eddie Izzard. We need to tell Gen Z about Eddie Izzard.
Wait, what? Oh, you think Gen Z doesn't know about Eddie Izzard and they should?
Yeah, I think that is just a weirdly underrated comedian.
Yeah, she's also such a good actress.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I love her. Yeah. Although I do find that since she came out, she's when she does stand up now, it's really corny. And I'm I'm glad that you found yourself, and I'm really, really happy for you. But can you be funny again? It makes me sad. I don't know. The old specials are so good though.
Well, the thing that's strange to me about the hour is that from a theatrical perspective, you're watching this person do an hour after you saw someone do 10 minutes and somebody else do 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you're watching the special, you don't get the opener and you don't get the middle. And so the timing is a little weird. We don't watch a lot of single serving things that are an hour long.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like TV shows?
No, I mean that's an episode,
Oh, I see.
right?
What you're saying.
We watch an hour-long episode of Cape Fear.
Oh, I see what
And then
you're
we watch another one next week, right? But a stand-up special is in a weird spot. Like feature films are not 60 minutes long. You know, it's. I guess the idea of like the half-hour thing is, it's like, you know, the smallest possible unit of entertainment is a half hour.
I think it has to be an hour, because if it's longer than that, it becomes more of an epic form, and stand-up is not an epic.
Because if it's an hour and a half, you could imagine it just being called a play.
That's just a play. That's Crap's last tape. You know?
It's Crap's last tape. It's anything that Sterling.
Just for Us by Alex Edelman. Wasn't that like a little over?
Spalding Gray.
Spalding Gray, yeah. It's Laurie Anderson even. Yeah. I think also it's like to the point we were making earlier about how we only do the like, let's hear it for this guy in stand up and comedy. It's like, it can't be too long, because otherwise it's going to not be funny anymore.
Yeah, people really don't have an enormous amount of patience for being entertained by a hilarious person.
Yeah. They're like, okay, that's enough for now. Well, because it's just so weirdly, it's like such a unique encounter. It's kind of unbearable. For
hour and a half. By the time my butt hits the chair, I need to be done in an hour and a half.
Just performance art. Performance art is impossible to bear. So in stand-up comedy is a kind of performance art.
People apparently do watch Chappelle riff for hours at the Cellar at like 1, 2 a.m.
Okay, that's a very particular kind of guy.
Yeah.
I just like the smell of his cigarettes.
The cultivated
It's just because he buys nice cigarettes. That's why they can stand that.
You know what I heard about yesterday? Tea cigarettes. Like cigarettes that are like made of tea.
Oh, no, not
that.
cigarettes that
I
have
did that for a
testosterone
time.
in them.
No, like tea. Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Well, all cigarettes have a little testosterone. That's why you get that kick. That's
why they're shaped like a penis.
Okay. All right, so, I mean, is there anything else you want to touch on, Seth? Is there anything you would like to promote?
Humorism newsletter and the Humorism evening podcast.
Yes.
Humorism.xyz.
Yeah.
Yes. I've been listening to your podcast. They're good. They're also of a weird length, which I appreciate.
I don't know how to talk for so long.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I immediately understand how much work podcasters do. Sorry to all of the podcasters I've shit on.
This episode is
It's
currently
important.
90 minutes, but we are going to cut it down to a tight 5.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right,
yeah,
so
no, this is fun. I think that's all I got on Bowie.
Okay, great. So
This has been This Past Weekend with Theo Vaughn. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, everybody.